"Don't touch me, please," the waitress whispered, then the door swung open. The smell of burnt coffee and cheap perfume clung to the air of Charlie's Diner, the kind of roadside place where broken hearts and tired souls came to hide from the world. The clock above the counter ticked past midnight, and the rain outside kept hitting the glass like restless fingers drumming against time itself. In the far corner, under the dim yellow light, a young waitress named Mia was wiping down a table for the 5th time, pretending she didn't hear the drunk laughter from the men sitting 2 booths away. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it, just like she hid everything else. She had only been working here for 3 months, but already, people whispered stories about her, stories of how she avoided touch, flinched when someone raised their voice, and never made eye contact for too long. They didn't know that every sound, every sudden movement, could take her back to that night 2 years ago, the night she had barely escaped with her life. So she kept her distance, smiled politely, and prayed silently for each shift to end without trouble. But trouble doesn't always knock, sometimes, it just slides onto a stool at the counter and smiles. Before we dive deeper into this emotional story, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of small acts that can change lives, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. It helps us spread these real, heart-touching stories to more people around the world. The night had been quiet until he walked in. Or rather, stumbled in. A man in a leather jacket, reeking of whiskey, his eyes glassy and his voice loud enough to silence the jukebox. "Hey sweetheart, one more coffee," he slurred, slamming his hand on the counter. Mia's heart skipped a beat, not because of his words, but because she had seen that kind of aggression before. The kind that started with a joke and ended in bruises. She froze for a second, forcing her voice to stay steady as she replied softly, "Of course, sir." When she returned with the cup, his hand brushed against hers, deliberately. She pulled back instantly. His grin widened. "What's wrong, darling? Don't be shy." He reached again, this time catching her wrist. "I said I want to talk to you." That's when her voice broke into a whisper, one that carried the weight of fear, trauma, and unspoken pain. "Don't touch me, please." Her whisper was so soft it barely cut through the rain outside. But in that moment, the door to the diner swung open so hard that it hit the wall with a loud bang. Everyone turned. The man released her wrist instantly. Standing in the doorway, drenched from the storm, was a stranger, tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a soaked military jacket. His eyes scanned the room once, landing on Mia's trembling hand, then on the man at the counter. Without a word, he stepped forward. The air in the diner grew heavy, and the only sound was the creak of his boots on the floor. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice low but calm, the kind of calm that comes from someone who has seen too much. The drunk man mumbled something and looked away, pretending to sip his coffee. The stranger looked at Mia. "You okay, miss?" She nodded quickly, tears threatening to spill, but her body was still shaking. He didn't press. He simply walked to an empty booth and sat down quietly. Something about him felt safe. Maybe it was the way he didn't stare, or how he spoke gently to the waitress who brought his food. When Mia gathered enough courage to bring him his order, he smiled faintly and said, "Thank you." 2 simple words, but to her, they felt like an anchor. Over the next few nights, he kept coming back. Always late, always sitting in the same booth, ordering the same black coffee and grilled cheese. His name was Ethan, a recently discharged army medic trying to find his place in a civilian world that felt foreign. He never talked much about himself, but whenever he noticed Mia flinch or hesitate, his eyes softened with a quiet understanding. He never asked questions, he just showed up, like clockwork, with a steady presence that began to melt the invisible wall she had built around her. One night, she dared to ask, "Why do you come here every day?" He smiled, looking into his cup. "Because this place reminds me that not everything broken stays broken." That line hit her harder than he could have imagined. Over the next weeks, their silent bond grew. She began to smile more, laugh softly, and even talk to regular customers. Ethan often stayed late, waiting until she finished her shift so she didn't have to walk to her small rented room alone. He never offered to walk beside her, only behind, keeping distance but still there if she needed help. For the first time in years, she didn't feel watched or unsafe. She felt protected. But healing never follows a straight line. One night, the same drunk man returned, angrier, louder, fueled by rejection and shame. "You think you're too good for me now?" he shouted, grabbing her arm again. She froze, her mind spiraling back into old memories. The smell of alcohol, the grip of a man's hand, the helplessness, it all came rushing back. But before she could react, a shadow moved between them. Ethan grabbed the man's wrist and twisted it just enough to make him release her. She said no, Ethan said firmly. The man snarled, but one look at Ethan's eyes made him think twice. He stumbled out, cursing under his breath. Mia collapsed against the counter, shaking. Ethan didn't touch her, not even to comfort her. He just stood near, silent, letting her breathe until she whispered, "Thank you." From that night on, something changed between them. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something sacred. He started helping around the diner when business was slow, fixing broken lights, cleaning tables, and making customers laugh. The owner, an old widow named Mrs. Clara, noticed the change in Mia. "He's good for you, sweetheart," she said one morning. Mia smiled shyly. "He doesn't even try to be," she replied. As months passed, the diner became their little world, a place of second chances. Ethan began volunteering at a local hospital, helping veterans with trauma, while Mia started taking night classes in psychology, hoping to someday help people like herself. They were two lost souls, finding healing not through romance, but through quiet understanding. One rainy evening, exactly a year after that first night, the diner was closing early. Mia stood by the window, watching the storm. Ethan walked in, carrying a small box. "What's that?" she asked. He smiled and handed it to her. Inside was a small silver bracelet with one engraved word, "Brave." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why?" she asked softly. "Because that's what you've been all along," he said. "You just needed someone to remind you." That night, for the first time since her past broke her, she didn't flinch when someone touched her hand. She placed her palm over his, whispering, "Thank you, for walking in that night." And in that quiet moment, with rain tapping on the glass and the smell of coffee in the air, she realized something powerful. Sometimes, the people who walk into our lives unexpectedly are the ones who remind us how to live again. So if this story touched your heart, please don't leave without showing some love. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales, because every small act of kindness can rewrite someone's entire story. Speech balloon special request, in the comments, tell us, have you ever met someone who changed your life just by being kind? We'd love to read your story.